Well, I hope you've started off your 4th of July pretty well. It's been kind of a wet and yet a little bit cool 4th of July so far. Maybe you already headed out to festivities. I know many people were at Kaboom Town in Addison last night. Around 11:30 last night, someone in our neighborhood was celebrating by shooting off fireworks, which caused our dog to bark and our kids to wake up. So we're very appreciative of our neighbors, and that's why we're moving. But I was reminded this week about July 4th that I celebrated in Chicago. And some friends and I decided that we were going to head downtown and join a million of our other closest friends as we gathered at the Lakeshore Park to watch fireworks. And so we headed over to the train station, and the trains that were normally a little bit subdued, full of executives drinking their coffee on their morning commute, were filled with music blaring, a little bit more adult beverages flowing, and a sense of excitement and anticipation as we were taking the journey downtown. We got off the train and we just followed the hordes of people through downtown Chicago to the fireworks. When we finally arrived at the park, I think I had 6 square inches that were actually mine. And they weren't really mine because I got stepped on all night. Beer spilled on me a couple of times. And I'd heard one hint that you wanted to make sure you got on the first train because after that, you might get stuck in downtown Chicago. So as the last firework was being shot into the air, I looked at my friends and screamed, "Run." And we took off running through downtown Chicago like nothing I'd ever seen before. Actually, I had seen it before in a 1950s UFO movie. The city was completely empty, and I look back, and hordes of people are running after us. All 1 million people were coming and trying to get on the same train that we were. We made it, but we ended up sitting on the stairs the entire trip back to Wheaton. And as we were sitting there, covered in beer and filth and the stench of 1 million people, we swore we would never, ever go to downtown Chicago on July 3rd again. But I sat and I wondered, and even reflected this week, what is it that would draw 1 million people to a tiny, confined area of a city to watch fireworks? Why would they go through all the hassle to be there? Well, it's because we, as citizens of this great country, want to celebrate. We want to gather together and celebrate the freedom that we enjoy. Celebrate our citizenship and our heritage in this great land. And many of us will do that over the weekend. I'm sure many of you have plans to have a picnic tonight, go see fireworks, be with family, all those great traditions of July 4th. But as Christians and believers, we need to back up one step. And before we head off with the masses, we need to ask ourselves, what does Scripture say? What does this book that is our guide and our rule of life say what it means about being a good citizen? What does it say about celebrating our citizenship here? And so I'm going to ask if you would to turn to 1 Peter with me. If you're looking in your pew Bibles, it's on page 1201. 1 Peter chapter 2, beginning in verse 9. And Peter is going to talk to the people that he's writing about what it means to be a good citizen, even in their own time. But before that, he has to back up and he has to kind of create layers. He has to create a foundation. And he starts off by giving the foundation of their identity, who it is that they are, whose it is that they are. And so we start in verse 9. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. So here Peter is reminding these people, these believers, that their first and primary identity is as the people of God. And as we read this, it sounds like what we would expect. It's pretty churchy Bible language, where God's people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, it's what we would expect to hear from the Bible. But to these people, it would have been shocking to hear this. Because what Peter is doing is referring them back to the Old Testament. As God brought his people out of slavery from Egypt, led them across the wilderness, and met with them at Mount Sinai, he would say to them, I want to be your God, and I want you to be my unique people. Out of all the world, I have chosen you. You, my chosen ones, will be my chosen people, a royal priesthood, a nation. That's the promise that God made to Israel. And now through Peter, he's extending that out to everyone who believes in Jesus Christ and helping them understand that they have a special relationship with God now. They are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. They have a brand new identity in God. And all of that identity is to bring praises to God as they live their life before other people. So Peter, first and foremost, wanted them to understand their identity. I saw the importance of this as I was working with students at Wheaton. There would be students that I would get to know and learn about their families. And they had those really close-knit families where the parents dropped them off at school and stayed for another week just to make sure everything was set up. They called them every day to find out how their classes were going, if they were doing their homework, wanting to know if they had enough money, making sure they were coming home for every holiday and every weekend that they could. But on the other side, there were families where the kid drove themselves to school or were sent on an airplane. They might receive 1 or 2 emails in a whole semester from their family. No phone calls, occasional checks just to make sure everything was okay, but no real relationship. And what was surprising to me as I got to know these students is that the ones that were most homesick were not these over here who were so enmeshed with their family. It was the ones over here. The ones who didn't really have a relationship, didn't really have a sense of home. And they were homesick because they were longing for something they'd never really experienced. They were wanting a sense of home or a sense of family that they never really had. While over here, these students knew the security of family and place and home. And that's what Peter is wanting God's people to know. Is that they are secure, they have been chosen, they have relationship. They are part of God's family, and as such, there's a strength of identity there, a strength of purpose, a strength of being as they go and as they live in the world. And so first, Peter builds the layer of identity that we are God's chosen people. But then he goes a step further. Look at verse 11 with me. Dear friends, he continues, I urge you as aliens and strangers in the world to abstain from sinful desires, which war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. Dear friends, I urge you as aliens and strangers in the world. It's odd to think of ourselves that way, isn't it? After all, most of us were born here or have now lived here so long that this feels like home. We're familiar with the language and the culture and the way of life. But Peter is telling the people, don't get too familiar. Don't be too comfortable, because this is a place that you don't really belong.
we thank you for joining us online. The ministries of Christ Church Plano are made possible by generous contributions from our members and viewers. If you have found this sermon meaningful and would like to make a gift of support, please visit christchurchplano.org/give. Thank you.